Arizona Territory, 1875. The sunset bled crimson across the western horizon, casting long shadows over the rugged landscape. Gabriel Hawthorn sat atop his dun-colored Mustang at the edge of a dry creek bed, squinting against the dying light. At 25, he'd already seen more hardship than most men twice his age. The harsh frontier had etched fine lines around his clear blue eyes, though his square jaw remained smooth beneath a few days' stubble. His broad shoulders carried the weight of 6 years working cattle since the war ended. "Come on, Rusty," he murmured, nudging his horse forward. "Ranch is still 4 miles out. We'll make it before full dark." The lonely trail stretched before him like his life, predictable, isolated, and leading nowhere in particular. Gabriel had chosen this existence deliberately after watching the war-tier families apart. The frontier was no place for tender feelings. Out here, attachment only led to heartache when disease, raiders, or the unforgiving land inevitably took those you loved. Better to ride alone, work hard, and keep to himself. The rocking H ranch where he'd worked these past 3 years offered exactly what he wanted: honest work, decent pay, and no expectations beyond tending cattle. Old man Henderson didn't pry into a man's past, and the other cowboys respected Gabriel's quiet nature. It was a life that made sense, uncomplicated by the messiness of deep connections. Gabriel shifted in his saddle, feeling the familiar ache in his lower back from days spent tracking strays. He'd volunteered for the solitary task, as he always did when the opportunity arose. The open range suited him better than the bunkhouse with its forced camaraderie and incessant conversation. A flicker of movement in the growing shadows caught his attention. Gabriel reined Rusty to a halt, hand instinctively moving to the Colt revolver at his hip. The frontier had taught him caution, if nothing else. "Who's there?" He called, voice firm against the gathering dusk. No answer came, but someone darted between the scrubby mesquite trees lining the wash. Gabriel dismounted smoothly, boots raising small puffs of dust as he landed. Keeping his hand near his holster, he moved cautiously toward the disturbance. "I see you there," he said, softer now. "I mean no harm." A flash of color, a girl's face appearing briefly before ducking behind a boulder. Gabriel froze, surprised. This was Apache territory, but the ranches had maintained an uneasy peace with the local bands for nearly a year now. What was a young woman doing alone in this desolate stretch? "You hurt?" he asked, taking another step forward. "Lost." This time she emerged fully, necessity apparently overcoming fear. She stood perhaps 20 feet away, a slender figure in a simple dress that showed signs of hard travel. Her black hair hung in a long braid over one shoulder, and her dark eyes regarded him warily. Though dirt-smudged and exhausted, there was a striking beauty to her features that caught Gabriel off guard. "I am lost," she said in careful, accented English. 3 days now." Gabriel's brow furrowed. She appeared to be about 19 or 20, her skin copper-toned in the fading light. Though dressed in a faded calico dress rather than traditional Apache garments, her heritage was unmistakable in her high cheekbones and the proud way she held herself despite her obvious distress. 3 days, Gabriel repeated, shocked anyone could survive that long in this harsh country without supplies. "Where you headed?" "Tonto Creek Mission," she answered, swaying slightly. "My name is Zuni Redfeather." Before Gabriel could respond, her knees buckled. He lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. She weighed almost nothing in his arms, light as dried tumbleweed. Up close, he could see the cracked dryness of her lips, the signs of dehydration clear in her face. "Easy now," he said, his practiced detachment faltering at her obvious distress. "I've got water." He helped her to a nearby rock and retrieved his canteen from Rusty's saddle. She drank slowly at his insistence, color gradually returning to her face. "Tonto Creek Mission is 2 days' ride north," Gabriel said. "You're miles off course. How'd you come to be out here alone?" Zuni lowered the canteen, her dark eyes meeting his. "I was traveling with trader family. Apache raiders attacked wagon, not my people, renegade band from south. I ran, got lost." She glanced down at her dress. "I was raised at Mission." "Not tribe." Gabriel nodded, processing this information. The mission at Tonto Creek was known for taking in orphaned Apache children, raising them with Christian teachings while attempting to preserve some of their heritage. It was a controversial practice, viewed with suspicion by both settlers and tribal elders alike. Night's coming, he said, glancing at the darkening sky. Ranch I work for isn't far. You can rest there, get proper food and water. Wariness flickered across her face. White ranchers do not welcome Apache. Old Man Henderson judges a person by their actions, not their blood, Gabriel replied, though he wasn't entirely certain this was true. Besides, you need help and I can't leave you out here. The uncharacteristic offer surprised even him. Gabriel Hawthorn didn't involve himself in others' troubles. That was his first rule of frontier survival. Yet here he stood, proposing to bring a strange woman back to the ranch, potentially inviting complications he'd spent years avoiding. Zuni studied him for a long moment before nodding once. Thank you. Gabriel helped her onto Rusty, then mounted behind her. He couldn't miss how she stiffened at the proximity, but necessity outweighed discomfort. As they set off toward the ranch, Gabriel found himself uncomfortably aware of her presence. The faint scent of wild herbs in her hair, the way she gradually relaxed against him as exhaustion overcame caution. You have a name, she asked as they rode. Gabriel, he answered, Gabriel Hawthorn. Gabriel, she repeated, the name sounding different in her accent. Thank you for finding me. Something stirred in him at those simple words of gratitude, an emotion he couldn't immediately identify. Whatever it was, it felt dangerously close to the kind of connection he'd sworn to avoid. Anyone would have done the same, he replied, steering Rusty toward the faint lights of the ranch that had just become visible in the distance. No, she said quietly, not anyone. Her certainty troubled him, as did the strange sense that in finding her, he might have lost something equally important, his carefully constructed isolation. The rocking H ranch sprawled across a gentle rise, its buildings clustered around a central yard. Light spilled from the main house windows as Gabriel guided Rusty toward the bunkhouse. Several of the ranch hands were outside, finishing evening chores. They looked up as Gabriel approached with Zuni. Found yourself company, Hawthorn? Called Jim Blackett, a grizzled cowhand with a perpetual tobacco bulge in his cheek. His eyes narrowed as he registered Zuni's features in the twilight. That an Apache girl. Gabriel felt Zuni tense. She's from the Tonto Creek Mission, he explained, keeping his voice neutral. Got separated from a trading party, been lost for days. Needs food and rest before heading on. More cowboys had gathered now, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. Old prejudices died hard in the territory. Henderson ain't gonna like this, said Frank Miller, the youngest hand at barely 19. You know how he feels about Indians after what happened to his brother's family. Gabriel dismounted, then helped Zuni down. She stood close to him, shoulders back despite her exhaustion, meeting the men's stares directly. She needs help, Gabriel said firmly. I'll talk to Henderson. As if summoned by his name, the ranch owner emerged from the main house. Thomas Henderson was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, his once red hair now mostly gray. He walked with the slight limp he'd acquired during a cattle stampede years earlier. What's all this? He demanded, approaching the gathered men. When his gaze fell on Zuni, his weathered face hardened. Who's this, Hawthorn? Gabriel stepped forward. Sir, this is Zuni Redfeather. She was traveling from the Tonto Creek Mission when her party was attacked. She's been wandering lost for 3 days without proper supplies. I found her near the South Creek bed. Henderson's eyes narrowed. Mission raised, you say? He addressed Zuni directly. That true, girl? Yes, sir, Zuni answered, her voice steady despite her condition. Sisters at Mission raised me since I was 4 years old. Henderson studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The entire yard had fallen silent, the ranch hands watching the confrontation with wary interest. Gabriel felt an unfamiliar tension grip him, the uncomfortable realization that he cared what happened next. Finally, Henderson nodded once. Mrs. Henderson can get her something to eat. She can sleep in the old tack room for tonight. He fixed Gabriel with a stern look. But she leaves tomorrow, Hawthorn. I won't have Apache on my property longer than necessary, mission raised or not. Times are too unsettled. Yes, sir, Gabriel agreed, relief washing through him. Thank you. As Henderson turned back toward the main house, he paused. And Hawthorn, she's your responsibility. Any trouble, it's on you. Gabriel nodded, acutely aware of Zuni standing silently beside him. She'd maintained her dignity throughout the exchange, showing neither fear nor resentment at Henderson's barely concealed hostility. Mrs. Henderson proved more welcoming, clucking sympathetically as she led Zuni into the kitchen. Gabriel watched them go before heading to the stables with Rusty, his thoughts unusually disordered. He'd prided himself on living simply, avoiding complications. Now he deliberately invited one into his carefully ordered existence. Later, after tending to his horse and washing up, Gabriel found himself lingering near the main house. Mrs. Henderson emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. "That poor girl," she said when she spotted him, "thin as a rail but wouldn't take seconds until I insisted. Got good manners, mission teaching shows." She lowered her voice. "Don't you mind Thomas's gruffness? Apache raiders killed his brother's family back in '68, and the wound's still raw. But he's a fair man underneath it all." "How is she?" Gabriel asked, surprising himself with his concern. "Exhausted but stronger after a proper meal. I've made up a bed in the tack room like Thomas said. It's clean enough and private." She studied Gabriel with knowing eyes. "She asked about you. Wanted to thank you properly for saving her life." Gabriel shifted uncomfortably. "Just did what anyone would." Mrs. Henderson replied, unconvinced. "Well, she's in the tack room if you want to check on her. I've given her some of my daughter's old clothes for tomorrow." Before Gabriel could respond, she patted his arm and returned to the house. Left alone in the yard, Gabriel debated with himself. The sensible thing would be to return to the bunkhouse, maintain his distance. Yet his feet carried him toward the small room attached to the stables where saddles and tack were normally stored. He knocked lightly on the door. "Zuni, it's Gabriel. Just checking if you need anything else." The door opened, revealing Zuni with her long hair loose around her shoulders, freshly brushed. She'd washed away the trail dust, revealing smooth skin the color of burnished walnut. The simple transformation struck Gabriel with unexpected force. "I am well," she said, her dark eyes meeting his. "Mrs. Henderson was very kind." "Good," Gabriel replied, suddenly at a loss for words. "That's good." An awkward silence stretched between them. Zuni broke it first. "Why did you help me, Gabriel Hawthorn?" The direct question caught him off guard. "Like I said, anyone would have." "No," she interrupted gently. "Many would pass by, some would harm. Few would bring stranger to their home, especially Apache girl." She tilted her head, studying him. "Why?" Gabriel considered his answer carefully. "I guess because it was the right thing. Out here we all face the same dangers, heat, thirst, outlaws. Seems foolish to add to those dangers by turning away from someone who needs help." Her expression softened. "At Mission, sisters teach us God places people in our path for a reason." A small smile touched her lips. "Maybe you were placed in my path, or I in yours." Gabriel felt an uncomfortable warmth spreading through him. This kind of talk of divine providence and meant-to-be meetings was exactly the sort of thing he'd learned to avoid. It led to expectations, attachments, inevitable disappointment. "Well," he said, stepping back, "you should rest. Tomorrow I'll see about getting you safely to Tonto Creek." Something like disappointment flickered in her eyes, but she nodded. "Good night, Gabriel Hawthorn, and thank you again." As he walked toward the bunkhouse, Gabriel tried to dismiss the strange feeling that had settled in his chest. It was just the novelty of the situation, he told himself, nothing more. Tomorrow he'd help her reach her destination, and his life would return to its comfortable solitude. Yet as he stretched out on his bunk, listening to the familiar chorus of snores around him, Gabriel found himself wondering about Zuni's journey, what had brought her to the mission as a child, and what awaited her there now. For the first time in years, he found himself curious about another person's story. It was, he decided as sleep finally claimed him, a troubling development. Morning brought clear skies and the bustling activity of ranch life. Gabriel rose early, completing his chores with his customary efficiency. As the other hands headed to breakfast, he approached Henderson in the barn. "Sir, about Zuni Redfeather, I'd like permission to escort her to Tonto Creek Mission. Should take 2 days there and back." Henderson looked up from inspecting a saddle. "Thought you might say that. Jim can cover your duties." He fixed Gabriel with a penetrating stare. "Never known you to volunteer for anything but solitary work, Hawthorn. Why the sudden interest in playing escort?" Gabriel maintained a neutral expression. "I found her." Seems right I should see it through. Henderson picked up a rag and began wiping down the leather. Beautiful girl, despite being Apache, be careful you don't lose your head. Mission girl or not, different bloods don't mix well out here. It's not like that, Gabriel said firmly, just doing what's right. Henderson nodded slowly, 2 days. Be back by sundown day after tomorrow. Yes, sir. Gabriel found Zuni in the kitchen with Mrs. Henderson, dressed in a simple blue calico dress that must have belonged to the Hendersons' daughter. Her long black hair was braided neatly down her back. She looked more rested, though still too thin. I'll be taking you to the mission, Gabriel announced. We should leave within the hour. Mrs. Henderson insisted on packing provisions for their journey, and by mid-morning they were riding north. Gabriel had borrowed a gentle mare for Zuni, who handled the animal with unexpected skill. You ride well, he observed as they followed the trail out of the valley. At mission, we learn many things, she replied. Sisters believe Apache girls should know both old ways and new. I can ride, read, write, cook American food, and still track game and identify healing plants. Seems a thorough education, Gabriel said, impressed despite himself. As they rode, the vast Arizona landscape spread around them, rugged mountains in the distance, scattered groves of mesquite and cottonwood providing occasional shade. The late May sun beat down relentlessly, but a gentle breeze made the heat bearable. What about you? Zuni asked after they'd been riding in companionable silence. Your story, Gabriel Hawthorn. Gabriel hesitated, unaccustomed to sharing personal details. Yet something about the open trail and her direct gaze loosened his usual reserve. Not much to tell. Grew up in Missouri, fought for the Union when the war came. After it ended, I headed west. Been working cattle ever since. Family, she inquired. Lost my parents before the war, no siblings. He adjusted his hat against the sun. What about you? How did you come to the mission? Zuni's expression grew distant. Apache wars. My mother was killed when soldiers attacked our camp. I was very young, but I remember running, hiding in the brush. A missionary woman found me, took me to sisters at Tonto Creek. She glanced at him. They were kind. Taught me their God loves all children, regardless of birth. Gabriel nodded, acutely aware of the tragic irony. His people had likely caused her to lose her family, yet here she was, dependent on his help. And you're returning there now because... I was visiting another mission near Tucson, learning to teach young children. A shadow crossed her face. When raiders attacked our wagon, I ran because I promised Sister Margaret I would return. She is ill consumption. I must get back before... She trailed off, but her meaning was clear. They made camp that evening near a small spring. As Gabriel built a fire, Zuni wandered the perimeter, returning with handfuls of plants. These leaves help with pain, she explained, arranging them to dry by the fire. For Sister Margaret. Gabriel watched her methodical work, struck by the gentle determination in her movements. You care for her deeply. She raised me, Zuni said simply. Taught me to read, to see beauty in both my worlds. When other children called me names, she said I was specially blessed to understand two peoples. The firelight cast warm shadows across her face, highlighting the elegant curve of her cheekbones, the quiet strength in her expression. Gabriel found himself wondering what it would be like to have someone speak of him with such fondness. And what will you do, he asked, after Sister Margaret passes? Zuni's hand stilled. I will teach as she taught me. Help children caught between worlds. She looked up, meeting his gaze across the flames. What about you, Gabriel? What future do you see? The question unsettled him, never thought much beyond the next season. Cattle work keeps me busy enough. No wife, children, she pressed, her dark eyes reflecting the firelight. Gabriel shook his head. The frontier's no place for attachments. Seen too many men broken by losing what they love. So you choose to love nothing. There was no judgment in her tone, only curiosity. I choose not to risk it, he corrected, poking at the fire. Simpler that way. Zuni was silent for a moment. Among my mother's people there is saying, the heart that fears fire will never know warmth. Perhaps in protecting yourself from loss, you lose something greater. Gabriel had no answer for this. They ate their simple meal in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. As they prepared to sleep on opposite sides of the fire, Zuni spoke again. Thank you for taking me home, Gabriel Hawthorn. Something about the way she said it, as if she saw beneath his carefully constructed walls, left Gabriel feeling strangely exposed. He murmured a reply and rolled into his blanket, yet sleep eluded him long into the night. They reached Tonto Creek by midday the following day. The mission stood in a small valley, a whitewashed church with several outlying buildings, surrounded by modest fields and an orchard. A wooden cross cast its shadow across the central yard. As they approached, children playing outside noticed them, pointing and calling out. Several nuns emerged from the buildings, shading their eyes against the sun. "Zuni," cried one of the sisters, hurrying forward. "Oh, child, we feared the worst when we heard about the attack." Zuni dismounted quickly, rushing to embrace the older woman. More sisters gathered around, exclaiming over her safe return. Gabriel hung back, suddenly feeling like an intruder on this joyful reunion. An elderly nun with kind eyes approached him. "You must be the one who brought our Zuni home. I am Sister Agnes. Please come inside and refresh yourself." Gabriel followed hesitantly. The mission's main building was cool inside, a welcome relief from the afternoon heat. He was led to a simple dining area where Zuni was already explaining her ordeal to the assembled sisters. "Gabriel saved my life," she said, gesturing toward him. "I was lost without water when he found me." All eyes turned to him, expressions of gratitude making him uncomfortable. "Just happened upon her," he muttered. "Anyone would have helped." "Nevertheless, we are in your debt," said Sister Agnes. "God surely guided your steps." Gabriel accepted a cup of water, unsure how to respond to such talk. The sisters insisted he stay for a meal, and despite his instinct to depart immediately, he found himself seated at their table as they served a simple but hearty stew. Throughout the meal, Gabriel observed Zuni with the sisters. She clearly belonged here, her manner easy and affectionate with both the nuns and the mixed-blood children who peered curiously at the strange cowboy. Yet there was something more to her, a quiet dignity that seemed to bridge both her worlds without fully belonging to either. After eating, Zuni disappeared to visit Sister Margaret. When she returned, her eyes were red-rimmed but composed. "She is very weak," she told Gabriel quietly as they walked in the mission garden, "but happy I returned in time." Gabriel nodded awkwardly, unaccustomed to navigating such emotional waters. "I should head back soon. Henderson expects me by sundown tomorrow." Zuni stopped walking, turning to face him. "Of course, you have done more than enough." She hesitated, then added, "I have something for you." "Wait here." She hurried inside, returning moments later with a small leather pouch. "Apache medicine," she explained, pressing it into his hand, "for pain, fever, wounds." "My thank you gift." Their fingers brushed during the exchange, sending an unexpected warmth up Gabriel's arm. "I didn't help you for payment," he said. "Not payment," she corrected, "gift. Among my mother's people, gifts create connection. Now, even when you return to your solitary life, a small thread connects us." Gabriel stared down at the pouch, strangely moved by the gesture. "Thank you." As he prepared to leave, the sisters gathered to see him off. Sister Agnes pressed a package of food into his hands, while the children waved excitedly. Zuni stood slightly apart, her expression unreadable. "Safe journey, Gabriel Hawthorn," she said as he mounted his horse. "You too," he replied inadequately, suddenly reluctant to leave. "I mean be well." As he rode away, Gabriel fought the urge to look back. This was how it should be, task completed, returning to his orderly life. Yet the small pouch in his pocket seemed to weigh more than its contents warranted, a tangible reminder of dark eyes and unexpected wisdom. The lone trail stretched before him once more, but for the first time in years, Gabriel found himself questioning whether solitude was truly what he wanted. 3 weeks passed. Gabriel threw himself into ranch work with greater intensity than usual, volunteering for the most demanding tasks. The other hands noticed his strange mood but knew better than to comment directly. "Something's got under Hawthorn's skin," he overheard Jim tell Frank one evening. "Never seen him so restless." It was true. Gabriel found himself unable to settle, plagued by memories of firelight conversations and philosophical questions about love and loss. The leather pouch remained in his pocket, transferred from one set of clothes to another, a constant reminder of its giver. When Henderson announced that several men would be driving cattle to the nearest town for sale, Gabriel immediately volunteered. The prospect of action, of movement, appealed to his unsettled spirit. Diablo Springs was a typical frontier town, a main street lined with false-fronted buildings, dominated by a saloon, general store, and small hotel. After delivering the cattle and collecting payment, the ranch hands naturally gravitated toward the Broken Spoke saloon. Gabriel joined them reluctantly, nursing a single whiskey while the others indulged more freely. He was considering returning to their camp outside town when the saloon doors swung open, admitting two men in trail-dusty clothes. Something about their hard eyes and the way they surveyed the room set Gabriel's instincts on alert. "Cattle buyers?" asked Frank, noticing Gabriel's attention. Gabriel shook his head slightly. "Don't think so." The men settled at a table, ordering drinks and speaking in low voices. When the barkeeper delivered their whiskey, one grabbed his arm, asking questions. The barkeeper pointed toward the door before hurrying away, looking uncomfortable. Gabriel watched this exchange with growing unease. When the men finished their drinks and left, he found himself following, staying well back as they made their way down the street toward the small building that served as both doctor's office and occasional meeting place. Through the open window, Gabriel could hear raised voices. He edged closer, catching fragments of conversation. Mission refusing to hand her over. "Apache girl belongs with her people. A red wolf wants his niece returned. Raid the mission if necessary." Gabriel froze, a cold certainty forming in his gut. They were talking about Zuni. Some Apache leader, this red wolf, was claiming her as kin and threatening the mission to get her back. Moving carefully, Gabriel circled around to where he could see through the window without being noticed. Inside, the two strangers were speaking with a well-dressed man Gabriel recognized as the town's mayor and another man in a military uniform. "The territory can't afford another Apache uprising," the mayor was saying. "If this red wolf is gathering warriors." 15, maybe 20 braves," said one of the strangers, a man with a prominent scar across his cheek. "Mean bunch, they've already hit 2 outlying farms." "And he claims this mission girl is his blood?" asked the military man. "His sister's daughter," confirmed the second stranger. "Says the white missionaries stole her during a raid years back." Gabriel backed away, thoughts racing. He needed to warn the mission. If these men were telling the truth, Zuni and the sisters could be in danger. Returning to camp, he found Henderson sitting by the fire while the other hands celebrated in town. "Sir, I need to borrow a horse," Gabriel said without preamble. "There's trouble brewing for the Tonto Creek mission." Henderson studied him shrewdly as Gabriel explained what he'd overheard. "Always figured there was more to your interest in that Apache girl," he said finally. "Take Rusty, he's the fastest, but Hawthorn, don't get yourself killed over this. One girl's not worth starting a war." Gabriel didn't bother arguing. Within minutes he was riding north, pushing Rusty harder than he ever had before. The mission was 2 days away at normal pace. He intended to make it by the following sunset. As miles passed beneath Rusty's hooves, Gabriel found himself praying for the first time since the war. Not formal prayers like those he'd heard at the mission, but desperate pleas for speed and safety, for Zuni, for the sisters, for all those caught in a conflict not of their making. He reached Tonto Creek as the sun was setting the next day, Rusty lathered and breathing hard. The mission appeared peaceful in the golden light, giving no indication of the threat that loomed. Children played in the yard while sisters tended the garden. Gabriel's sudden arrival caused a stir. Sister Agnes hurried to meet him as he dismounted. "Mr. Hawthorn, what brings you back so soon?" "Is everything." "Where's Zuni?" he interrupted, scanning the yard. "There's trouble coming. Apache warriors led by someone named Red Wolf." Sister Agnes paled. "Red Wolf, are you certain?" "Overheard men in Diablo Springs. They say he's claiming Zuni as his niece, threatening to raid the mission if she isn't handed over." "Dear Lord," murmured the nun, crossing herself, "come inside quickly." She led him to a small office where another sister was writing at a desk. When Sister Agnes explained the situation, the woman, Sister Mary, looked grave. "Red Wolf is Zuni's uncle by blood," she confirmed, "a notorious renegade who refused the reservation. When soldiers raided their camp years ago, Zuni's mother was killed. We believed all her family had died." "Where is Zuni now?" Gabriel demanded. "At Sister Margaret's grave," Sister Mary replied. She passed 3 days ago. Gabriel felt a pang of sorrow for Zuni's loss, quickly overshadowed by urgent concern. How many men can defend this place? The sisters exchanged troubled glances. We have no men, Sister Agnes admitted. Father Dominic is away at another mission. The only firearms we have are an old shotgun and a hunting rifle. Gabriel ran a hand through his hair, assessing options. How many children? 23, ranging from 4 to 16. Mostly Apache and Mexican, with a few white orphans. The situation was worse than he'd feared. You need to evacuate, he said firmly. Tonight, if possible, is there somewhere you could go, nearby settlement? Military post. Fort McDowell is 3 days' journey, Sister Mary said, but we have children too young to make such a trip quickly, and wagons that would be easily tracked. Gabriel was about to respond when the door opened. Zuni entered, her expression shifting from surprise to concern as she took in the tense atmosphere. Gabriel, what's happening? When they explained the threat, Zuni's face grew still. Red Wolf, she repeated, her voice distant. I remember him from childhood, a fierce warrior, quick to anger. She looked at Gabriel. If he's claiming me, he won't stop until he has what he wants. Then we leave, Gabriel said, all of you now. Zuni shook her head. These children cannot travel far or fast, and Red Wolf is a skilled tracker. He would find us and then there would be bloodshed. She straightened her shoulders. I should go to him. Perhaps I can prevent violence. No, Gabriel said sharply, surprising even himself with his vehemence. You can't sacrifice yourself to a man who's already attacking innocent farms. What choice do we have? Sister Agnes asked, her voice trembling. Gabriel paced the small room, mind racing. We make the mission defensible, move everyone into the main building, barricade windows, stockpile water. I'll ride to Fort McDowell for help. That would leave them undefended for days, Zuni pointed out. Not if I cut across Apache Pass, Gabriel countered. It's dangerous, but I could reach the fort in a day and a half. The army could be here before Red Wolf arrives. Zuni's dark eyes met his, filled with a mixture of doubt and hope. Why would you risk so much for us, Gabriel? The question hung in the air between them. Gabriel had asked himself the same thing during his desperate ride. The answer had come to him somewhere in the lonely miles. His carefully constructed belief that attachment only led to pain had become a prison, not a protection. Because some things are worth the risk, he said simply. Something shifted in Zuni's expression, a recognition, perhaps, or a shared understanding. She nodded once. Then we must hurry. The next hours passed in a flurry of activity. The sisters gathered the children into the main building while Gabriel and the older boys moved furniture to block windows and doorways, leaving only the back entrance accessible. Water barrels were filled, food gathered. The few weapons were loaded and placed strategically. As twilight deepened, Gabriel prepared to leave. Rusty had been fed and watered, rested enough for the difficult journey ahead. Zuni found him checking the cinch on his saddle. Apache Pass is treacherous at night, she said. Let me write a map. Inside, she quickly sketched landmarks on a piece of paper, adding notes about water sources and dangerous areas. As she worked, Gabriel found himself studying her profile, the gentle curve of her cheek, the determined set of her mouth. The thought of leaving her to face Red Wolf, even behind mission walls, filled him with dread. Here, she said, handing him the map. Follow this exactly, deviate only if absolutely necessary. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and this time neither pulled away immediately. Gabriel found himself unable to look away from her face, suddenly aware of how much had changed since he'd found her by the dry creek bed. I'll return with help, he promised. Keep everyone inside. Don't trust anyone who comes before me. Zuni nodded, her eyes holding his. I will pray for your safe journey. Gabriel hesitated, then reached into his pocket, withdrawing the medicine pouch she had given him. This brought me back to you once. Seems like it's working again. A smile touched her lips. Perhaps it is not the medicine, but the heart carrying it. Before he could respond to this startling statement, Sister Agnes appeared in the doorway. It's time, Mr. Hawthorn. You must go while darkness provides cover. With a final glance at Zuni, Gabriel mounted Rusty and set out into the night, her map clutched securely in his pocket. The familiar weight of the medicine pouch rested against his chest, a talisman against the dangers ahead. Apache Pass lived up to its treacherous reputation. Narrow trails wound between towering rock formations, the moonlight creating deceptive shadows that made navigation challenging. Gabriel relied on Zuni's detailed map, marveling at her precise knowledge of this difficult terrain. He traveled through the night, stopping only briefly to rest Rusty and check his bearings. By dawn, he had cleared the most dangerous section and pushed on across open country, the fort still a day's hard ride away. The sun beat down mercilessly as morning progressed into afternoon. Gabriel conserved water carefully, aware that the next spring marked on Zuni's map was several hours ahead. His thoughts kept returning to the mission, to children gathered in fear, to sisters praying for deliverance, to Zuni standing resolute despite the threat. He tried to imagine her among the Apache, returned to her mother's people after 15 years away. Would she adapt as she had to mission life? Or would she forever be caught between worlds, belonging fully to neither? And why did the thought of never seeing her again create such a hollow ache in his chest? Gabriel reached Fort McDowell as the sun was setting on the second day. Exhausted and dust-covered, he demanded to see the commanding officer immediately. Captain James Wilson was skeptical at first, but the details Gabriel provided about Red Wolf's recent attacks convinced him of the threat's legitimacy. "I can spare 20 men," Wilson said finally. "We can leave at first light." "That's not soon enough," Gabriel argued. "Red Wolf could arrive at the mission tomorrow." "My men need rest, and so do you," Wilson replied firmly. "We'll move faster and fight better if we're not falling from our saddles. First light, Mr. Hawthorn, that's the best I can offer." Gabriel had no choice but to accept. He was given a cot in the enlisted men's quarters and fell into an exhausted sleep, dreams filled with burning buildings and Zuni's face disappearing into flames. They departed at dawn, Gabriel riding alongside the military detachment. Captain Wilson set a brisk pace, but to Gabriel, every minute felt like an hour, time in which Red Wolf might be closing in on the mission. By mid-afternoon of the following day, they crested a ridge overlooking Tonto Creek Valley. Gabriel's heart stopped at what he saw, riders, at least 15 of them, surrounding the mission buildings. As they watched, several of the Apache dismounted and approached the main door, weapons in hand. "We're too late," Gabriel said, his voice hollow. "Not yet," Wilson countered, signaling to his men. "Form up. We'll approach from the east, use the trees for cover." The soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, but Gabriel couldn't wait. Urging Rusty forward, he galloped toward the mission, heedless of the captain's order to hold position. All he could think was that Zuni was inside those walls, facing warriors who viewed her as property to be reclaimed. His sudden approach drew attention. Several Apache turned, weapons raised. Gabriel reined Rusty to a halt within shouting distance, raising one hand to show he wasn't immediately threatening. "I want to speak to Red Wolf," he called out, "about the woman Zuni Redfeather." There was a moment of confusion among the warriors before one stepped forward. A tall man with streaks of gray in his long black hair, his face marked with old battle scars. He wore a mixture of traditional Apache garments and items clearly taken from white settlers. "I am Red Wolf," he said in accented but clear English. "Who are you to speak of my niece?" Gabriel dismounted slowly, keeping his movements deliberate. "My name is Gabriel Hawthorn. I found Zuni when she was lost, brought her to this mission." Red Wolf's dark eyes narrowed. "Then you are the one who kept her from her true people." "She belongs with Apache, not in white man's prayer house." "She belongs where she chooses," Gabriel countered. 15 years she's lived here, this is her home." A dangerous smile crossed Red Wolf's face. "No longer. Soon we will burn this place. The women inside have refused to give her to us. Now they will all die." "There are children in there," Gabriel said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Innocent children, many of Apache blood. Children who should be with their people, not learning white ways," Red Wolf spat. "Better they die than become white in their hearts." Gabriel was about to respond when movement at the mission caught his attention. The barricaded door was opening slowly. His heart sank as a slender figure emerged. Zuni stepped into the sunlight, dressed in a simple white dress, her long black hair falling loose down her back. She stood straight and unafraid before the warriors. "Uncle," she called in clear Apache. Gabriel couldn't understand the words, but he recognized the dignity in her bearing, the courage in her stance. Red Wolf responded, his tone harsh. Zuni answered calmly, then switched to English. I will go with you freely, she announced, if you swear to leave this place and these people unharmed. By the spirits of our ancestors, swear it. Red Wolf considered this, his expression calculating. You will return to our ways. Become Apache woman again. I will go with you, Zuni repeated carefully. What happens after depends on how you honor your word today. Gabriel stepped forward. Zuni, no. She turned to him, her dark eyes filled with resolve. This is my choice, Gabriel, to prevent bloodshed. Before he could argue further, movement in the trees behind them caught Red Wolf's attention. The Apache leader stiffened as he spotted the soldiers positioning themselves on the ridge. Betrayal, he snarled, reaching for his weapon. You brought soldiers. To protect innocent lives, Gabriel said quickly, but no shots have been fired yet. This can end without blood. Red Wolf's warriors had gathered closer, weapons ready. The tension in the air was palpable, the situation balanced on a knife's edge. One wrong move would trigger violence that would claim many lives. Zuni moved forward, placing herself between Red Wolf and Gabriel. Uncle, she said firmly. I remember the teachings of our people, honor and courage above all. There is no honor in killing children and those who cannot fight. There is no courage in burning a house of prayer. Something flickered in Red Wolf's hard gaze, a shadow of uncertainty, perhaps even shame. You speak like your mother, he said finally. She also believed in foolish peace. My mother died because there was no peace, Zuni countered. Would you have me die the same way? Or would you have me live to help our people find a better path? For a long moment, no one moved. Gabriel held his breath, aware that 20 rifles were trained on the Apache warriors, that one nervous finger could ignite a massacre. Finally, Red Wolf lowered his weapon slightly. You have become clever with words, niece. Perhaps too clever. He glanced at the soldiers, then back at Zuni. I will not spill blood at a prayer house, but you will come with us, speak to the elders. They will decide if you are still Apache in your heart. Zuni nodded. I will come. But first I must speak to those inside, ensure the children are not afraid. She looked at Gabriel, and I must say goodbye. Red Wolf studied her, then Gabriel, his expression darkening as he recognized something in their exchange. Be quick, he growled. We ride within the hour. As Red Wolf returned to his warriors, Captain Wilson approached cautiously. The situation, he asked Gabriel quietly. Balanced on a thread, Gabriel replied. She's buying peace with her freedom. Wilson frowned. We could take them in a fight. And how many would die? How many orphans would watch their home burn? Gabriel shook his head. She's trying to prevent that. A brave woman, Wilson conceded. We'll hold position, but if those warriors make any aggressive move, we'll open fire. Gabriel nodded, then followed Zuni toward the mission building. Inside, frightened children clung to the sisters, who offered what comfort they could. Sister Agnes rushed forward. Zuni, you cannot go with them. They are dangerous men who have attacked innocent farms. I must, Zuni said gently. It's the only way to ensure your safety, and perhaps I can influence them toward peace. She touched the cross hanging at her neck. Sister Margaret taught me that sometimes one must sacrifice comfort for the greater good. Sister Agnes embraced her, tears flowing freely. We will pray for you every day, child. Zuni moved through the room, speaking softly to each child, embracing each sister. Gabriel watched, a terrible weight settling in his chest. When she finally approached him, he found himself unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. Walk with me, she said quietly, leading him to a small side room. Once they were alone, Gabriel found his voice. Don't do this. There has to be another way. Zuni shook her head sadly. There isn't, not without bloodshed. Then I'll come with you, he said impulsively. To ensure you're treated well. A small smile touched her lips. They would kill you on sight. She reached out, her fingers lightly touching his cheek. You have already done more than I could have asked. You brought soldiers in time to prevent an attack. You stood between warriors and innocents without drawing your gun. Gabriel caught her hand, holding it against his face. I can't just let you go. You must, she said softly, for now. Something in her words kindled a desperate hope. For now. Zuni's dark eyes held his. Red Wolf will take our band south toward the border mountains. There is a place called Eagle Canyon where they often camp. She pressed something into his hand, another small leather pouch, similar to the one she'd given him before. This contains a map and something else. Gabriel closed his fingers around it. I'll find you. I know, she whispered, because now you understand what I told you by the fire. The heart that fears loss will never know love. Before he could respond, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his, a brief, gentle kiss that somehow conveyed everything they hadn't said. Then she stepped back, composing herself. I must go, they are waiting. Gabriel walked with her to the mission door. Outside, Red Wolf and his warriors were already mounted, watching impatiently. Captain Wilson had positioned his men strategically, ensuring the Apache kept their word about departing peacefully. Zuni embraced Sister Agnes one final time, then walked with quiet dignity toward the waiting warriors. One brought forward a horse for her. As she mounted, she looked back at Gabriel, her expression a mixture of sorrow and determination. Red Wolf gave a command and the band began to ride south. Zuni did not look back again, sitting straight in her saddle as the distance between them grew. Gabriel stood motionless, the small pouch clutched in his hand until the riders had disappeared from view. Only then did he open it, finding a carefully folded paper and something small and hard wrapped in cloth. The paper contained a detailed map, just as she'd promised. The cloth held a simple silver ring, a mission school prize perhaps, or a gift from Sister Margaret. A message was written beneath the map in neat script. The heart knows its true home. I will wait for yours to find me. Gabriel stared at the words, understanding flooding through him. This wasn't an ending, it was an invitation. A challenge to break free from the walls he'd built around himself, to risk everything for something far more precious than safety. Looking south toward the mountains where Zuni had disappeared, Gabriel made a silent promise. He would find her, and when he did, he would never let her go again. 2 weeks later, Gabriel stood before Thomas Henderson, hat in hand. I'm leaving, sir. Wanted to thank you for the work these past years. Henderson studied him from behind his desk. This about that Apache girl, isn't it? Heard what happened at the mission from Captain Wilson himself. Said you showed real courage. Gabriel nodded. I need to find her. You realize what you're risking? Henderson's expression was grave. Territory ain't kind to mixed couples. Apache might kill you on sight. And even if you both survive, where would you go? What kind of life could you offer her? These were questions Gabriel had asked himself countless times since Zuni had ridden away. The answers had come gradually, crystallizing into certainty. I don't know exactly, he admitted, but I know I can't keep living half a life afraid to care about anyone or anything. That's not living at all. Henderson was silent for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer, withdrew a leather pouch, and pushed it across the desk. Your wages plus a little extra. You've been a good hand, Hawthorn. Thank you, sir. As Gabriel turned to leave, Henderson added, there's a small trading post in the Dragoon Mountains. Man named Davis runs it. Treats Indians fair, might give you work if you need it. Remote enough that folks mind their own business. Gabriel nodded, grateful for the unexpected kindness. I'll remember that. By sunset, he was riding south, Rusty carrying supplies for a long journey, Zuni's map tucked securely in his shirt pocket alongside her medicine pouch and silver ring. The familiar weight against his heart felt right now, no longer a burden of unexpected connection, but a promise of something worth risking everything for. The journey to Eagle Canyon took 5 days of careful travel through increasingly rugged country. Gabriel avoided main trails, mindful that a lone white man in Apache territory invited suspicion or worse. He relied on Zuni's detailed map, marveling again at her precise knowledge of water sources and landmarks. When he finally reached the overlook above Eagle Canyon, Gabriel surveyed the scene below with a mixture of hope and apprehension. A band of Apache had indeed made camp there, perhaps 20 lodges set up near the stream that ran through the canyon floor. Horses grazed in a natural corral formed by the canyon walls. Women moved about, tending fires and working on hides. Gabriel studied the camp carefully, trying to spot Zuni among the figures below. Doubt crept in. What if she wasn't here? What if Red Wolf had taken her elsewhere? Or worse, what if she'd been mistreated, forced to marry, or... He cut off these thoughts. Zuni was strong, resourceful. She would find a way to survive until he came for her. She had trusted him to understand her message, to follow where she led. Now he needed to trust her in return. As dusk fell, Gabriel made his way down into the canyon, approaching from the south where the walls were less steep. He left Rusty hidden in a grove of cottonwoods, continuing on foot until he reached the edge of the Apache camp. Fires glowed against the gathering darkness, voices murmuring in a language he couldn't understand. Gabriel hesitated, unsure how to proceed. To walk directly into the camp would likely mean immediate death. But how else could he find Zuni? The decision was taken from him when a slight figure materialized from the shadows, a hand covering his mouth before he could cry out in surprise. Familiar dark eyes met his in the dimness. "You came," Zuni whispered, removing her hand. She wore traditional Apache dress now, her hair braided with small shells woven through the strands. Gabriel reached for her, pulling her into an embrace that conveyed everything words couldn't: relief, longing, the terrible fear that he might never have found her. "Of course I came," he murmured against her hair. Zuni pulled back slightly, glancing toward the camp. "It is dangerous. The men are gathered in council if they find you here." "Then we leave now," Gabriel said. "I have a horse hidden in the cottonwoods. We can be miles away by dawn." Uncertainty flickered across her face. "Gabriel, it is not so simple. These are my mother's people, my blood. These past weeks I have learned things about her, about my family, stories I never knew." Gabriel felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. "You want to stay?" "No," she said quickly, "but I cannot simply vanish. Red Wolf has granted me a place of honor as his niece. If I disappear, he will assume kidnapping. He will seek revenge against the mission, against any white settlement he finds." "Then what?" Gabriel asked, fighting to keep the desperation from his voice. "I can't lose you again, Zuni." She touched his face gently. "You won't, but we must be clever, not rash." She reached into a small bag at her waist, withdrawing a folded paper. "Take this to Captain Wilson at Fort McDowell. It contains information about Red Wolf's band, their movements, planned raids. I have learned much listening at council fires." Gabriel took the paper, understanding dawning. Information the army can use to stop the raids without bloodshed. Zuni nodded. "Captain Wilson is a fair man. Tell him I offer this freely, but ask in return for peace talks. The mission sisters have taught me to read and write in both languages. I can serve as translator." Her eyes held as steadily. "This is how I bridge my two worlds, Gabriel. Not by choosing one over the other, but by helping them understand each other." The wisdom of her plan struck Gabriel forcefully. This was why he had fallen in love with her: her courage, her intelligence, her ability to see beyond the immediate to a better future. "How long?" he asked. "3 weeks," she replied. "Return to this place with Captain Wilson's answer. I will meet you here." She hesitated. "If he refuses, come anyway." "We will find another way." Gabriel pulled her close again, his heart pounding with both fear and hope. "I'll be here," he promised, "whatever his answer." This time when they parted, Zuni pressed something into his hand, a small carved wooden horse. "A token," she explained, "to remember our path is just beginning." She slipped away into the darkness before he could respond, returning to the camp where firelight flickered against canyon walls. Gabriel watched until she disappeared among the lodges, then made his way back to where Rusty waited patiently. As he mounted, Gabriel looked down at the wooden horse in his palm. It was beautifully carved, each detail rendered with careful precision. Like the medicine pouch and silver ring, it represented a bridge between worlds, her gift to him, a symbol of the future they might build together. Tucking it securely alongside her other tokens, Gabriel turned Rusty north. The journey ahead was uncertain, the outcome far from guaranteed. But for the first time since the war, he rode with purpose beyond mere survival, with hope that transcended fear, with love that made the risk worthwhile. Captain Wilson leaned back in his chair, studying the paper Gabriel had presented. "This information is remarkably detailed," he said finally. "Locations, numbers, planned movements. If accurate, it could help us prevent several raids without firing a shot." "It's accurate," Gabriel assured him. "Zuni wouldn't provide false information." Wilson set the paper down, and in exchange she wants peace talks. With herself as translator. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Irregular, but not without precedent. The Navajo have used mission-educated individuals as intermediaries before." "She understands both worlds," Gabriel explained. "Respects both, wants to prevent bloodshed on either side." And you, Wilson fixed him with a penetrating stare. What do you want, Hawthorn? Because I'm not blind to what's happening here. You're not just playing messenger between an Apache woman and the army. Gabriel met his gaze steadily. I love her, want to build a life with her somewhere we can both belong. Wilson's eyebrows rose. You understand the challenges. Territory isn't kind to such arrangements. We understand, Gabriel replied, but some things are worth fighting for. A hint of a smile touched Wilson's mouth. Indeed they are, he stood, moving to a map pinned to the wall. Tell your Zuni I accept her offer. I'll bring a small detachment to the south bend of Tonto Creek in 3 weeks' time. Neutral ground, away from both the fort and Apache territory. Relief washed through Gabriel. Thank you, sir. Wilson turned back to him. Don't thank me yet, these talks may come to nothing. Red Wolf has a reputation for volatility, and even if they succeed, your path won't be easy. We know, Gabriel said simply. As he prepared to leave the fort, Wilson approached with a final piece of advice. Henderson mentioned Davis's trading post in the Dragoons might be worth considering. Davis employs several mixed couples. Wife is Mexican, I believe. Creates a more understanding environment. Gabriel nodded, grateful again for the unexpected kindness. The frontier could be harsh and unforgiving, but it also produced men like Wilson and Henderson, pragmatic, fair-minded, willing to see beyond rigid boundaries. The journey back to Eagle Canyon seemed both longer and shorter than before, longer in anticipation, shorter in purpose. When Gabriel finally reached the meeting point, he found Zuni already waiting, a small bundle beside her. You came, she said, echoing his words from their last meeting. Always will, he replied, dismounting quickly. This time when they embraced, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. Gabriel held her as if she might disappear again, memorizing the feel of her in his arms. Wilson agreed, he told her when they finally separated. Peace talks at Tonto Creek 3 weeks from now. Zuni's face lit with hope. Then it begins, a chance for understanding at least. How did you get away from the camp? Gabriel asked. I told Red Wolf I wished to gather certain plants that grow only by moonlight, she explained. He trusts me now. I have been careful, respectful of their ways while still maintaining my own beliefs. A shadow crossed her face, but he would never understand this, us. Gabriel touched her cheek. Then we need to leave now, before he discovers you're gone. Zuni nodded, retrieving her small bundle. I am ready. They rode double on Rusty, traveling through the night and following game trails to avoid main routes where they might be spotted. By dawn, they had put considerable distance between themselves and Eagle Canyon. Where will we go? Zuni asked as they rested briefly to water Rusty at a small spring. Gabriel described the trading post Henderson and Wilson had mentioned. Might be a place we could start. Davis apparently employs folks like us, people from different worlds who have found each other. And if not there, we'll find somewhere else, Zuni said with quiet confidence. The frontier is vast. Somewhere there is a place for us. Her faith bolstered his own. They continued their journey, staying off main trails, traveling at dawn and dusk to avoid the worst heat. At night they would make camp in secluded spots, talking for hours beneath the stars. Zuni shared stories of her mother's people, legends passed down through generations. Gabriel spoke of his childhood in Missouri, of the war that had driven him west, of how lonely the years had been until he found her by that dry creek bed. Not found, she corrected gently one night as they lay side by side. Recognized, my people believe souls know each other across many lives. Perhaps we were simply remembering. Gabriel wasn't sure he believed in such things, but the idea held a certain beauty. Then I'm glad we remembered, he said, drawing her closer. They reached Davis's trading post a week later, a sturdy compound nestled in the foothills of the Dragoon Mountains. It consisted of a main building constructed of adobe and timber, several outbuildings, corrals, and a small cluster of cabins. A sign in both English and Spanish welcomed travelers. Inside, they found a surprisingly well-stocked establishment. The proprietor, Jeremiah Davis, was a barrel-chested man with a graying beard and shrewd eyes. His wife, Alina, was a handsome Mexican woman who greeted customers in fluid Spanish and English. Most notably, their staff included a young Cherokee man married to a white woman and an older couple, the man white, the woman Yaqui Indian. Davis listened to Gabriel's inquiry about work without visible judgment. Could use another hand, he allowed. Got supply trains coming through regular, need protection from here to Tucson. Wife's been wanting help with the garden too. He glanced at Zuni, noting her obvious Apache features and the way she carried herself, a blend of mission education and native dignity. Can you read and write, girl? Yes, sir, Zuni replied. In English, Spanish, and Apache. I was educated at Tonto Creek Mission. Davis's eyebrows rose, 3 languages. He exchanged a look with his wife, who nodded slightly. Might be more valuable inside the post then. Got customers from all backgrounds. Translator would be useful. We can offer one of the small cabins, Alina added, her accent softening her words. Need some work, but solid walls, good roof. Gabriel felt Zuni's hand slip into his, squeezing gently. We're grateful for the opportunity, he said, and the welcome. Davis shrugged. Out here, judge folks by how they work and how they treat others. Rest is just details. He fixed them with a penetrating look. That said, not everyone shares my view. You'll face hardship, prejudice. Some won't sell to you, serve you, accept you. We understand, Gabriel replied. We're prepared for that. Good, Davis nodded once. You can start tomorrow, $250 a day plus room and board. Fair. More than fair, Gabriel agreed. Their cabin was indeed small, just one room with a stone fireplace, rough plank floor, and 2 windows covered with oiled paper rather than glass. But it was solid, private, and most importantly, theirs. That night, as they made the space their own with the few possessions they carried, Gabriel realized how far he'd come from the solitary cowhand who believed attachment only led to pain. Thinking deep thoughts? Zuni asked, setting her small bundle of treasures on the crude shelf Gabriel had repaired. Thinking about how wrong I was, he replied, moving to stand behind her, arms encircling her waist. About love. About connection, about what makes life worth living. She turned in his embrace, her dark eyes holding his. And what does make life worth living, Gabriel Hawthorn? This, he said simply, us building something together. Having someone to share both joy and hardship with, he touched her face gently. I was a half person before I found you, existing, not living. Zuni's smile held both tenderness and wisdom beyond her years. Among my mother's people, there is a belief that each person has a song in their heart. When we find the one who can sing harmony to our melody, our spirit is complete. She placed her hand over his heart. I hear your song, Gabriel. I always have. In the small cabin with its dirt floor and rough walls, Gabriel felt wealthier than any man alive. He drew Zuni closer, sealing their future with a kiss that promised everything words couldn't express. The peace talks at Tonto Creek marked the beginning of a fragile understanding between Red Wolf's band and the territorial authorities. Zuni's role as translator proved invaluable, her knowledge of both cultures helping bridge seemingly insurmountable differences. When Red Wolf learned of her choice to build a life with Gabriel, his anger was predictable but ultimately tempered by respect for her courage and the visible happiness she'd found. You have your mother's heart, he told her during their final meeting. Strong, stubborn, seeing paths others cannot. His gaze shifted briefly to Gabriel. If this white man ever causes you pain, remember you have Apache family who will avenge you. He brings me only joy, Zuni assured him. But I will remember I have family in both worlds. At Davis's trading post, Gabriel and Zuni gradually built a life that defied frontier conventions while honoring their individual heritages. Gabriel's skill with horses and knowledge of cattle made him invaluable as both trader and guide. Zuni's linguistic abilities and knowledge of native medicinal plants brought customers from 3 territories seeking her services. They were married twice, first by a traveling preacher who visited the trading post, then in a private Apache ceremony Zuni designed, incorporating elements of her mother's traditions. Davis and Alina stood witness to both, their own successful marriage across cultural boundaries serving as both inspiration and proof that such unions could thrive. When their first child was born a year later, a daughter with Gabriel's blue eyes and Zuni's copper skin, they named her Margaret Hope, honoring both the mission sister who had raised Zuni and the future they believed in. She would be followed by 2 brothers in subsequent years, each child a living bridge between worlds. The Arizona territory remained challenging for families like theirs. There were towns where they weren't welcome, officials who refused to acknowledge their marriage, strangers who hurled insults or worse. Yet there were also unexpected allies. Henderson hiring their oldest boy for summer work when he was of age, Captain Wilson ensuring military contracts came to Davis's trading post, the Tonto Creek sisters visiting regularly and teaching their children. As the frontier gradually transformed into settled territory, Gabriel and Zuni's trading post, purchased from Davis when he retired, became known as a place where all were treated fairly, regardless of origin. Their children grew up speaking 3 languages, riding like Apache, reading Shakespeare, and navigating multiple cultures with the ease that comes from being born to such heritage. On their 10th anniversary, Gabriel presented Zuni with a silver pendant he'd commissioned from a silversmith in Tucson, a design that incorporated both a cross and traditional Apache symbols. "For the woman who taught me that love isn't something to fear, but something to build a life upon," he said as he fastened it around her neck. Zuni touched the pendant, then reached into her pocket, withdrawing the small wooden horse he'd carried to Fort McDowell all those years ago. "I carved this believing in a future we couldn't yet see," she said softly. "Now look at all we've built together." From the doorway of their home, no longer a one-room cabin but a comfortable house they'd constructed as their family and business grew, they could see their children playing in the yard, customers trading at the post, mountains rising purple against the horizon. Their world wasn't perfect, but it was rich with connection, purpose, and the love that had begun when a lonely cowboy found a lost Apache girl on the trail and discovered his own heart in the process. "Worth every risk," Gabriel murmured, drawing her close. "Every one," Zuni agreed, her dark eyes reflecting the same certainty they'd held when she'd first challenged his solitary existence. "And I would take them all again to find you." In the vast Arizona territory, still wild in places but yielding slowly to civilization, their love stood as testament to the frontier's truest promise, not just of land and opportunity, but of the freedom to forge connections that transcended the boundaries of the world they'd been born into. Together, they had created something entirely new, a harmonious blending of separate songs into one melody that would continue long after they were gone.